I'm John McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics, messianicapologetics.net. And I would like to welcome you to this episode of Messianic Insider, your theology and news roundup for December the 19th, 2025. Today, we have an interesting subject matter. It has been spurred on a little bit because of the recent release of the Charlie Kirk book, Stop in the Name of God, which, for disclosure's sake, I don't have a copy of it. I'm not expecting to get a copy of it until sometime later in January. But people are doubtlessly thinking about, they're asking questions about the seventh-day Sabbath, Shabbat. A lot of, people are responding to the release of Stop in the Name of God. And so it's only proper that we ask the question from Isaiah 66:23. All flesh, sometime in the future, the millennial reign of Yeshua the Messiah, is going to be remembering Shabbat. Is some of that possibly breaking into the present right now? And this is doubtlessly spurred on by the wide number of non-Jewish believers who have been supernaturally directed into the Messianic community over the past several decades. So we're going to have a teaching on Isaiah 66:23, and I think you will be surprised at some of the things that which this passage actually concerns. Okay, our teaching is taken from our ministry's publication, the Messianic Sabbath Helper. You can access this at messianictheology.store. It is available in both paperback as well as ebook for Amazon Kindle. And it was recently updated this fall. It's got a lot of information in it, especially as it concerns not only different traditions involving the Sabbath, different approaches seen in both Judaism and Christianity, but most especially all of these Bible passages which involve the Sabbath. All right, so let me switch windows really quickly, and then we will get into our teaching. All right, there we go. Isaiah 66:23. All flesh observing the Sabbath. It shall happen that from one new moon, Rosh Chodesh, Complete Jewish Bible, to another, and from one Sabbath, Shabbat, to another, all flesh will come to worship before me, says Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Messianic Apologetics Revised Version, which is taken from the public domain World Messianic Bible, adapted from it. There are disputes over how to read the details of Isaiah 65:17 to 66:24. Although surveying these prophetic words, Bible readers should deduce how it is guaranteed that there will be a new heavens and a new earth in the future. Premillennialists will argue that following the second coming of the Messiah, the Messianic Kingdom will exist on earth for 1,000 years, to then be followed by the eternal state. It would seem that Isaiah 65:17 to 66:24 has some overlapping details, requiring readers to factor in additional information from the Tanakh and Apostolic Scriptures in order to sort through what this all involves. Of notable importance for Messianic readers of Isaiah would be the thrust of Isaiah 66:8, which is commonly associated with the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. Who has heard of such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall a land be born in one day? Shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she gave birth to her children. Isaiah 66:8, World Messianic Bible. Generally speaking, premillennial interpreters will recognize how a millennial condition is represented by the statement of Isaiah 66:23, which affects a restored kingdom of Israel and the sovereign reign of Israel's Messiah over planet Earth from Jerusalem. The inclusion of righteous persons from the nations at large within the restoration process of Israel's kingdom, and their being afforded a significant place of honor, precedes statements being issued about the institution of the Sabbath. I will set a sign among them, and I will send those who escape of them to the nations, to Tarshish, Pul, and Lud, who draw the bow, to Tubal and Javan, to faraway islands, who have not heard of my fame, nor have seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the nations. The Higidu et Kevodi Begoyim. They shall bring all your brothers out of all the nations for an offering to the Lord, on horses, in chariots, in litters, on mules, and on camels, to my holy mountain Jerusalem, says the Lord, as the children of Israel bring their offering in a clean vessel into the Lord's house. Of them I will also select priests and Levites, says the Lord. Isaiah 66:19 through 21, World Messianic Bible. It is somewhat shocking to Bible readers to witness how the God of Israel will indeed take people from among the nations, and from them likewise I will take some to be Levitical priests. New Jewish Publication Society version. This is how serious it is for the Lord to see that not just Israel proper, but people from the world at large have a welcome place in his plan of redemption. Of course, God's fealty to his promises and covenant made to the physical seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by no means gets left out. The Lord asserts that just as the future new heavens and new earth, which will come to pass, will be firm and steadfast, so your offspring and your name shall remain. Isaiah 66:22, World Messianic Bible. God will indeed restore Israel to a rightful place of prominence. The word of Isaiah 66:22 is properly compared to the promises issued to David in Psalm 89:28 to 37. I will also make his offspring endure forever, and his throne as the days of heaven. If his children forsake my Torah and don't walk in my ordinances, if they break my statutes and don't keep my commandments, then I will punish their sin with the rod and their iniquity with stripes. But I will not completely take my loving kindness from him, nor allow my faithfulness to fail. I will not break my covenant, nor alter what my lips have uttered. Once I have sworn by my holiness, I will not lie to David. His offspring will endure forever, his throne like the sun before me. It will be established forever like the moon, the faithful witness in the sky, Selah. Psalm 89:28 to 37, World Messianic Bible. There are a variety of key perspectives, many useful, although a few notably negative, to the decree, V'haya midei chodesh bechodsho u midei Shabbat beshabbato yavo kol basar lehishtakavot lefanai amar Adonai. From new moon to new moon, and from Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh shall come to worship before me, says the Lord. Isaiah 66:23, New Revised Standard. In reading Isaiah 66:23, it is quite common to see examiners emphasize the inclusive nature of the worship which is to be witnessed, as kol basar, most literally rendered as all flesh, Revised Standard Version, New Revised Standard, English Standard Version, New Jewish Publication Society Version, will come before Israel's God. Barry G. Webb states, quote, "The redeemed of the entire human race will offer unending worship to their Creator," unquote. John D.W. Watts makes the extrapolation, quote, "Zion's congregation represents all humankind. The world needed a forum where persons of every race could be assured of a place in God's plan. Jerusalem is that place," unquote. These are surely sentiments to be appreciated. One view, which is definitely dismissive of the details present in, "And it will come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Shabbat to another, all flesh will come to bow down before me," Isaiah 66:23, Tree of Life version, is that of Derek Kidner. He claims, making a reference to traditional interpretations of Colossians 2:16, that, quote, "New moon and Sabbath have ceased to be binding on the Christian," Colossians 2:16, "and it is implausible to suggest that these shadows will be reinstated. They stand here for their substance, the joyful dedicating of all life to the Creator," unquote. So, even while the institution of the seventh-day Sabbath or Shabbat is most certainly specified in Isaiah's prophecy, this is only taken as a metaphor of some kind of communion between God and his own. The view of Jeffrey W. Grogan is a bit ambiguous in terms of the Sabbath, as it expresses the thought that the worship of God is portrayed in terms of the cultic system of ancient Israel. Quote, "God here makes the greatest and most comprehensive of all of his promises, the guarantee of his pledges to his people. He further affirms that the wider vision of the worship of all mankind will also find its fulfillment. This is expressed in terms of the old, God-given Jewish system of special days and Sabbaths for worship," unquote. A theological meaning for the placement of the Sabbath in Isaiah 66:23 is offered by J.A. Meacher, notably avoiding the whole issue of Shabbat as an institution, and instead focusing readers on how, quote, "The emphasis throughout chapters 56 to 66 on the Sabbath arose from the fact that this is the commandment which more than any other necessitates the submission of the practical planning of life to the Lord's timetable, a searching test of practical holiness," 58:13 to 14. "Only a true commitment of heart and no mere conformist motive can accomplish this," unquote. Noting the presence of the new moon and Sabbath in Isaiah 66:23, Christopher R. Seitz connects this not only to a global adherence of these Torah institutions, but also the anticipated adherence to the Feast of Tabernacles. He even makes light of Isaiah 45:23 and an anticipation of all bowing before Israel's God. Quote, "Verses 22 and 23, which precede the solemn concluding coda, verse 24, continue to refer to new moon and Sabbath, just as Zechariah refers to strict observance by all peoples of the Feast of Tabernacles, having referenced Zechariah 8, 20 to 23, 16 to 21. The reference to all mankind bowing down before me, verse 23, may pick up the solemn word of 45:23. By myself I have sworn, a word that will not be revoked. Before me every knee will bow. As many have recently noted, a further reference to this key text can be seen in Philippians 2:10, unquote. While Messianic readers might be keen to focus on the anticipated worldwide observance of the seventh-day Sabbath or Shabbat in Isaiah 66:23, the connection with Isaiah 45:23 should be well taken. I have sworn by myself, The word has gone out of my mouth in righteousness, and will not be revoked, that to me every knee shall bow, every tongue shall take an oath. World Messianic Bible. Being able to balance the required recognition that God will restore the Zerah, or offspring of Israel, Isaiah 66:22, with an inclusive plan of welcoming in many from the nations at large of planet Earth, is imperative for a proper application. Benjamin D. Sommer fairly indicates in the Jewish Study Bible, quote, the distinction between Judeans and non-Judeans is not mentioned here. The worshipers of the Lord in verse 23 include all flesh, not just Israelites, and the men who rebelled against God in verse 24 include Israelites, as the preceding two chapters make clear. Thus, the book ends on a highly universal note, unquote. The Jewish Study Bible. John N. Oswalt goes a little further in emphasizing how the promise of God in Isaiah 66:23 is not just given to Israel proper, but to the all flesh which will worship before him, while emphasizing how Israel proper must be separate in order to maintain its fidelity to the one true God and not assimilate. Such separateness in history is not to be an end to itself. Quote, to whom are the promises given? Just to the people of Israel? Hardly. They are given to those of all flesh who worship him from month to month and Sabbath to Sabbath. This is the ultimate end of Israel's religion, so that everyone should have the opportunity of joining Israel in worshiping the one God. Zechariah 14:16-21. Israel is not to be separate so that it can revel in its separateness, but so that its faith can survive to be declared. When separation becomes an end to itself, it has become just a more arcane form of idolatry. But if Israel had allowed itself to be absorbed into the pagan religions around it, as it was constantly in danger of doing, there would have been no faith to declare, unquote. There has been some Messianic Jewish discussion on how to approach the statement of Isaiah 66:23. Every month on Rosh Chodesh and every week on Shabbat, everyone living will come to worship in my presence, says Adonai, Complete Jewish Bible. In his short book, The Irrevocable Calling, Israel's Role as a Light to the Nations, Daniel C. Juster rightly lauds the institution of the seventh-day Sabbath as representing a condition of rest which is to be experienced by all human beings. Quote, Israel's calling as priests to the nations teaches us that Sabbath rest is a sign of the will of God for all peoples. It is God's intention that all be liberated from the bondage of slavery, both literally, externally, and spiritually, internally, from the soul bondage that destroys our peace and happiness. The Sabbath is a foreshadowing of the age to come, and the universal promised land where all will live in the peace and rest of God. The Sabbath foreshadows that one day all nations will enter into God's rest. Sabbath observance is an intercessory action for the sake of all nations, releasing the power of God to move history toward this goal, unquote. Following this remark, one might expect a Messianic Jewish leader to praise the efforts of people in today's Messianic movement to keep Shabbat as a holy time, where individuals and families can rest, be refreshed, and fellowship in new and special ways. Instead, and notably, failing to recognize the egalitarian and inclusive nature of the Sabbath as seen in the Pentateuch, Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11, Deuteronomy 5, 12 through 15, where the Sabbath was to be kept by far more than just native Israelites. Juster only emphasizes the worldwide Sabbath observance as something to be reserved for the future millennium. Quote, although the 10 commandments are mostly universal in application, the commandments are in the form of a covenant given to Israel. The Sabbath is specifically a covenant sign given to the nation of Israel within this covenant document. While there is no hint that Gentiles during this age have such a covenant responsibility, the Sabbath day will become universal in the millennium, e.g. Isaiah 66:23. There is no commandment that the Gentiles during this age have such a covenant responsibility, unquote, from the irrevocable calling. Relegating a universal observance of the seventh-day Sabbath almost exclusively to the future millennium betrays a lack of comprehension for the theological construct of realized eschatology, where the substance of future realities can already be experienced to a wide degree by God's people in the present. God's people should be living the life of the world to come now, as its power has already broken into the present evil age via the work of the Messiah. Galatians 1:4. There are clear examples of this, where Tanakh prophecies which involve a restoration of physical Israel to the Holy Land and a reestablishment of Israel's kingdom have already begun to be fulfilled in the work of the Messiah and the spiritual experience of the body of Messiah. James the Just said that the tabernacle of David was in the process of being restored via the salvation of the nations. Acts 15:15-18, Amos 9:11 and 12. The new covenant of Jeremiah 31:31-34, also Hebrews 8:8-12, does indeed involve more than just a supernatural transcription of God's instruction onto the hearts and minds of his people, as the wider themes of Jeremiah chapter 31 involve a regathering of scattered Israel to the promised land. Yet, believers faithful to the scriptures affirm that the core realities of these prophecies can be experienced today by those individually transformed by God's Spirit with a greater corporate fulfillment on the agenda of the future. All of God's people today can also observe a seventh-day Sabbath in anticipation of the future millennium, when it will unambiguously be expected of all. And so one of the big questions, and I think it's a huge debate in the Messianic community right now, as we try to sort through what is happening in our world and what our future is going to be, how much of that future of all flesh will be keeping Shabbat is breaking into the present right now. Now, I agree with the Messianic community that if you are not Jewish, you have to be specially called by the Lord into this movement at its present phase of development for sure. Yet, saying that all flesh keeping the Sabbath may not necessarily be breaking into the present, yet at the same time recognizing the tabernacle of David is in the process of restoration with more to come, the new covenant for certain, new heart, new mind, being spiritually transformed, forgiven of sins, that's available, although there's more to come. There are things which are breaking into the present experience of today's Messianic community, which are doubtlessly millennial age prophecies. And don't find yourself unnecessarily fighting or deterring the will of God in this regard. Okay, so that concludes our teaching, our theology roundup for today. Now, I need to switch windows really quickly. Yes, and that teaching is available from our resource, the Messianic Sabbath Helper. You can get it at messianictheology.store. All right, so let's move on to our news roundup. And we do the news roundup after the theology roundup because the news is time sensitive and it changes from day to day. when I woke up this morning, I could just feel the tension. I could just feel the tension in our world. And mind you, there was a speech from the president the other day. There's supposed to be another speech going on, if it hasn't already concluded right now. There's a lot of questions regarding what's taking place in Venezuela. Likewise, we see conflicting reports on Russia, Ukraine, and indeed, you can just feel the tension. Of course, then we've got the growing anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism. We're still trying to sort through the fallout from the massacre at Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. People are very concerned about what's happening. And look, in the kingdom of God, we just go day to day to day. And I certainly appreciate your prayers for my mental health, my mental well-being, because, there's a lot of pressure on me, not only to, have a live stream 5 times a week, but to juggle different aspects of our ministry behind the scenes. There's a lot of nuts and bolts going on, things which, concern me. And yeah, I just really appreciate your prayers, especially as we come to the conclusion of calendar year 2025. I'm very grateful that we've been able to serve the Lord consistently this year because, there have been some things occur even with Donald Trump in the White House. Our freedom of speech, our freedom of religion here in America relatively intact. There are still things which concern me. And, these are things which I've got to pray through. We all have to sort through. And indeed, as difficult a mission as it is to help facilitate stability, sometimes I don't express some of my concerns personally to you that, look, I need your prayers. And, there's a lot of things out there which we're watching, we're monitoring, and they are concerning. All right, so so all the news stories I'm about to go through, these will be available for you to look at later today when this episode is archived at MessianicApologetics.net. We are always reminded, number 1, be praying for peace, Israel, Gaza, the Middle East. Number 2, be praying for peace, Russia and Ukraine. And number 3, be praying for reason and sanity here on the American home front. All right, our first story, and these are things which I encounter passively on social media. Here we have from Open Source Intel, Tucker Carlson, this is from yesterday, Israel has no resources, no gas, no oil, and the right choice is to go with Qatar. Okay, so a lot of us have been monitoring Tucker Carlson's support of Qatar. Netanyahu, we have just closed a $35 billion gas agreement with Egypt. Yeah, Israel does have massive offshore natural gas deposits and $35 billion agreement with Egypt. So we just continue to monitor Tucker Carlson and some of his positions. All right, so here's something which, this is from Forward Magazine. Found this on Instagram. This is very important, and it actually gives kind of an opinion of a reflection on what we even see in today's Messianic community at times. Christians are displaying menorahs in their windows post-Bondi Beach attack. Why some Jews object. Some see the practice as an act of solidarity, while others are wary of cultural appropriation. And so you can read some of this in greater detail. But basically, this is hardly a surprise. There are Jewish people who are, hey, this is great. I think that when a Christian person puts a menorah in their house after a terrible tragedy like Bondi Beach, they're expressing solidarity with Israel, the Jewish people. We need all the friends and allies we can get. And there are Messianic Jewish people, Messianic Jewish believers, when they see non-Jewish people, non-Jewish believers participating in Hanukkah, the festivals, Shabbat, a kosher style of eating, their concern is, are they going to be friends and co-laborers with us in the Messianic mission? They don't feel like their identity has been infringed upon or robbed because they know they need all of the friends and allies they can get. And yet, there are other Messianic Jews out there who when they see non-Jewish people participating in Hanukkah, they're participating in the festivals or Shabbat or what have you, they think their identity is being infringed upon and robbed. And that's kind of a reflection of what you see in that article from Forward Magazine. Fortunately, I have many Messianic Jewish friends and colleagues. They do not think that our family is infringing upon their Jewish heritage by us participating in various outward matters of Torah. But is that everyone I've encountered? Of course not. There are Messianic people out there who, as times get dark, they're going to turn more inwardly to one another, to fellow Messianic Jews, and they think that a lot of non-Jewish people doing outward things of Torah, even with, as we've just discussed, Isaiah 66:23, anticipating worldwide Sabbath observance in the millennium. They're upset about that breaking into the present. And we just have to learn how to outmaneuver this sometimes. Okay, here's one from End Time Headlines yesterday, the 18th of December. Rumors of war. A gathering storm is brewing that could pull Russia and China into a direct conflict with America. Okay, now we've heard this kind of thing before, so we're just passing this on. We know that something has got to give, doubtlessly, in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. It just can't keep on going and going with Ukraine fighting down to the last man. It can't. And, you know, the Russian economy going down the you-know-what. Okay, here's one yesterday from the New York Post. Here on the American home front, Ghislaine Maxwell makes Hail Mary bid to overturn conviction days before Epstein files release. Okay, so this is just one thing to note about the Epstein issue. We got another story coming up in just a moment. Okay, from Newsmax, Health and Human Services moves to end sex change procedures for minors. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on Thursday announced a series of proposed regulatory actions to carry out President Donald Trump's executive order directing Health and Human Services to end the practice of sex-rejecting procedures on children. Okay, so we know that's been a huge controversy here in America. Can minors go through sex reassignment surgery? Here, no, they can't do that. And notice it doesn't say anything about adults, grown adults wanting to go through sex reassignment surgery. I mean, a lot of people might think that that is odd or strange, but that is not something which is prohibited. It's minors. Okay. Also with the president, this is kind of interesting to pass on. There's a 41-second clip from Fox News. President Trump signs an executive order aimed at reclassifying marijuana as a less dangerous drug. And so the quote here is, for decades, this action has been requested by American patients suffering, from extreme pain. And generally speaking, I think most of us are agreed that while, marijuana probably shouldn't be legalized as a recreational drug, if it can relieve pain for some people, then things should be loosened up a lot. And some of the things that, cause people who are in possession of marijuana to get thrown in jail for long periods of time, that should be loosened up a lot. For disclosure's sake, I have never smoked pot. I have, on at least one occasion, a long time ago, had half a bottle of Johnny Walker Red Label, and I'm still here to tell you about it, but never smoked pot. Had a little too much to drink sometimes, but never did anything beyond that. All right, from Open Source Intel, and there's a number of stories with this. This is from yesterday, 4:29 p.m. President Trump signs an executive order committing the United States to return to the moon by 2028. And our next story from CBS News, there's a 3-minute, 30-second clip. Newly confirmed NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman said, "We're just months away from sending American astronauts around the moon for the first time in more than half a century." So, of course, I'm a huge fan of the space program, space exploration. Like many of you, I like science fiction, Star Trek, Star Wars, Babylon 5, Battlestar Galactica, The Expanse, whatever it is. And I think this is great. But we do know that when questions about space exploration, going back to the moon, come up, they're going to be questions, why haven't we been back to the moon since the 1970s? Did they really land on the moon in 1969? We've all had to field these questions. More concerning is once we get back to the moon, because unlike the 1960s, where NASA, the astronauts, they were still using a slide rule to calculate their trajectory, their speed, their landing. There was a lot of antiquated technology by our standard today. We're going to the moon now in a technology age where people are going to be watching it live, moment by moment, streamed to the internet, on social media. We've got advanced technology. Think about these devices right here. We've got such advanced technology, it's not even funny. And along with that, questions are naturally going to be raised about, well, once we get there, what are we going to find there, which we didn't see beforehand? What about the greater universe? Because we know so much more now than we did back in the 1960s and 1970s. And it just raises more and more questions. So we'll see what happens coming up early in 2026 with the new moon missions. All right, from Newsmax. TikTok signs deal to sell U.S. unit to American investor group. All right, so TikTok has signed a deal to sell its U.S. entity to a joint venture controlled by American investors, according to a report. It comes after a law passed last year required that the U.S. version of the app be spun off from its parent company, ByteDance, or be banned in the United States. Okay, so we are waiting to see what's going to come of TikTok. We have experimented with TikTok as a ministry before. We didn't have a lot of success with it previously. We'll see what's going to happen as it gets spun off to American investors. We might go back into it and try it out again. We might not. That is to be determined at a later time. Okay, to Russia and Ukraine, open source intel, and there's a clip here, 1 minute, 4 seconds. President Putin on Ukraine peace talks, and I note that this is something which does change from day to day. We have agreed to the proposed terms by President Trump. They made some offers and invited us to certain compromises. These were difficult decisions for us, but we agreed to the compromises that are being proposed to us, so it's incorrect to say that we are refusing something. The ball is totally on the side of our Western opponents, of the head of the Kiev regime and its European sponsors. Okay, so this is as of 5:19 a.m. this morning. Now, moving on to another development. This is from 6:58 a.m. this morning. Also open source intel from Vladimir Zelensky, 48-second clip. The deployment of Oroshenk in Belarus, that's a missile system, is being completed. We understand its location and have shared this information with our partners. We previously warned that Russia would deploy Oroshenk in Belarus and showed its operational range. This poses a threat to many European countries, including Poland and Germany. All right. What's going to happen? Is this why I woke up this morning feeling tense? Okay, back to America now. From the New York Post, breaking: DOJ set to release several 100,000 Jeffrey Epstein files today. Okay, so we will see how that comes to pass. Doubtlessly going to be a lot of opinions and a lot of people, should this happen, and I don't know if it's happened yet as of us going live, but People are going to be sorting through this material, coming to conclusions, wanting answers for a lot of the questions these materials will raise. Okay, 2 more stories from Visegrad 24. This is very concerning. Likewise, this is from Instagram not that long ago, 1 hour ago. Putin promises to start war against NATO if Kaliningrad is blocked. And of course, that's the little Russian enclave right here, stuck between Poland and Lithuania. And finally, our last story, and this is from Rapid Response 47. And there is a 2-minute, 7-second clip here. An interview with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Secretary Rubio on negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. It's not our war, but there's only one entity on earth that can actually talk to both sides and figure out whether there's a way to end this war peacefully. And that's the United States. And indeed, we have recognized that for quite some time, especially with the return of Donald Trump to the White House. Look, we need to pray for peace, Russia and Ukraine, and hopefully this war is not going to last that much longer, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be very, very tough. And will it be an honorable peace? Will it be a tense peace? It's hard to say. But we do need to pray for peace, because ultimately the people who are hurt the most by any of these conflicts are the believers. Those are the ones who are hurt the most. And there are a lot of believers, Ukraine, Russia, huge numbers of Messianic Jewish believers, Ukraine, Russia. And this is just general wars and rumors of wars. It's not something that is specifically prophesied or anticipated in Holy Scripture, but it creates tension in the world. It hurts people, it hurts economies, and it creates instability. But welcome to the last days. So, all right, so that concludes our news roundup. As always, on behalf of Messianic Apologetics, I would like to sincerely thank you for your ongoing prayers, encouragement, and support for all of our ministry efforts, especially those of you who have given a special year-end offering as we anticipate a lot going on in 2026. If you have not already, please do visit my website, messianicapologetics.net. There you can access a wide array of articles, frequently asked questions entries, back issues of Outreach Israel News. You can take a look at some back episodes of Messianic Insider, different McKee moment shorts, etc. And please do be sure to give this live stream a thumbs up or a heart, as it will help its exposure on social media. We will see you again on Monday with another episode of Messianic Insider. Until then, may God bless you, Shabbat Shalom, and take care.